Bases drop for your afternoon and getting ready for Thursdays with Niko on a Friday. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we're getting the Western perspective on things coming up in just a little bit. Niko Moreno from the Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports will be joining us in just a little bit as training camps are starting to kind of trickle in and open up. For Niko specifically, the Seattle Sounders getting ready for their trip to Morocco and the Club World Cup. And the way that it works is that if the Sounders lose in their first match, then they come home. And then they collide into the MLS season. And we'll get to Niko's thoughts about where Seattle is heading on a bunch of different things. We mentioned a couple of their moves last week and got into the notion of Eber, got into the Western Conference, got into all of those ideas that Seattle are chasing around right now. And then there was another name that I wanted to get into with Niko and get into the conversation there and find out what's going on with everything going on out west. There have been some transfers, obviously, for the Atlanta United fans that join us in the morning every day on Soccer's Morning Show at Soccer Down Here. The idea of the loan of Marcelino Moreno to Curitiba, and we're keeping an eye on that. There's discussions of Joseph Martinez, whether it's Inter Miami or if it is SC Internacional, and there's the discussions there as well. There have been other moves in and around the league. Austin FC has transferred Tomas Pochettino to Fortaleza in Brazil. St. Louis City signed Ben Lunt. That's a very sneaky signing for a backup keeper, Ben Lunt, who has performed very, very well at the USL Championship level, being picked up from Phoenix Rising to be a part of the goalkeeper core in St. Louis for St. Louis City SC. So we'll keep an eye on that. Red Bulls brought back Brazilian striker Elias Manuel, and it's the second time that he is there. Originally joined Red Bulls on loan for Grêmio for the last couple of months of the season last year. Now he signed a 3-year deal from Grêmio through 2025 with an option of 2026. Statement from head of sport Jochen Schneider. Proved to have a great potential in MLS in the short time he was with us last season. Very happy to have him with us permanently. Excited to see him continue to help accomplish the goals that we have as a club. 2 goals, 1 assist in 6 matches. Had a brace on decision day for Red Bulls against Charlotte FC. They got a 13th straight trip to the playoffs because of that. Manuel joins Corey Burke after he was signed from Philadelphia as a free agent. You've also got Patrick Klimala signed as a DP. And Manuel scored 9 goals in 40 appearances for Grêmio, 2 goals before joining New York on loan. So you've got that as a part of your information as well. Alan Franco, for those of you that missed it, officially been transferred to Sao Paulo. And, you're keeping an eye from Atlanta United, because if something were to happen in the summer where you get the incredibly large offers for Thiago Almada, you get the offer that you can't refuse, and then all of a sudden you end up with needing a replacement. Does Marcelino Moreno work his way back in? And that's the big discussion there. I know, Rack, sometimes what we do is with Niko Moreno and our friends out west. You remember that Niko used to join us at 10:30 in the morning on Thursdays to wrap up the Thursday show. And so what we've decided to do basically during the off season is try and find a good time when we can get this guy coming into the grid. And Niko, welcome once again for another round. Folks aren't used to getting notices about Thursdays with Niko on a Friday for 10:30 in the morning Pacific time on a Friday afternoon. Can't hear you. I can't hear you. Hit your.
Hold on. Let's go back.
There it is.
Can you hear me now?
You're good now.
Okay, good. Yeah. No, it happens sometimes, we like to keep you guys guessing. And, John keeps inviting me over, so I can't say no.
Nope. But now I was trying to explain to Rack about how we would normally have you at 10:30 Eastern time on Thursdays in season. But we figured during the off season, we'd kind of sit there and, take it easy and just try to bring it in more of a Pacific time zone element to where we can talk about news of the day, things like that, and do it where you're on your second cup of coffee and not firing up your first in the red green. But what I wanted to start off with this week, obviously, it is pitchers and catchers report. I mean, it is time getting to it where it is strikers and keepers report. You're getting ready to do all your medicals. You're having players sitting there and all right, what's your heart rate? What's your run rate? How are things going? What's it been like up in the Pacific Northwest getting ready for a truncated training camp? Because everybody's got a trip to Morocco coming up in short order.
Yeah, I mean, it's been just that. I believe the players started doing all their medical check-ins and in one way or another checking in with the club since yesterday. Today is the first full day of practice, and then tomorrow will be actually the first day that they're allowing media members to join and probably ask a couple of questions to start off the season. But I am hearing nothing but good things in terms of how the group is doing and the expectations of the front office. I am looking forward to being in that training and seeing where guys are at. I know that Raul Ruidiaz did a whole lot of traveling this season. He was all over Europe, obviously in Peru as well. Now he's back, seeing where he's at. Yamar Gomez Andrade was one of the few players who was not out and about because he actually just had a brand new kid. He had a brand new baby, Tiziano Gomez Funes, and that's his second baby. So he stayed here, which allowed him to do a lot of training, a lot of gym sessions. And actually, I have an article coming out for Sound Our Heart that you guys could probably check out sometime this week. We should release it sometime soon about him talking about the previous season and what he sees out of this season. Christian Roldan, obviously, is someone who's constantly in shape, constantly being at the gym. So I'm very curious to see him, and especially after securing potentially that 5-year deal, which still not official, but that we are pretty sure he will be getting here soon. So the core group of this team, the backbone of it, I think is intact. This squad is going to depend on a lot of that experience and that chemistry coming in from last season. So I'm hoping to see that on Saturday.
So what is, and I know that you've got questions, and we all have questions, Niko, but when you go into that first presser opportunity, what's your first question for Craig Weibel? What's your first question for Brian Schmetzer?
Well, for Craig is how much are you willing to modify this roster with the balancing act that is maybe affecting chemistry in order to potentially bring more talent, because I know how tight the salary cap space is. And in terms of development and those players that they've been watching coming from their academies or Tacoma, is there a couple of guys? Who is it that is maybe going to come and help you at positions of need? That being left back, if you are not able to bring in someone who you really wanted, or you are a little bit behind the 8 ball and you maybe want to bring up a guy to either play right back and then maybe you slide Alex left. I mean, what are you doing in terms of adding depth to certain positions of need if you don't get those guys that you really want? And in terms of Brian Schmetzer, how do you get this team prepared in such little time after a grueling season, with some disappointment, to get ready mentally and physically for a Club World Cup? And what are his expectations on that end?
What are your expectations for the Club World Cup?
Ooh, damn. I'm still in preseason too, John. Hold on. Let me get a feel for it. Look, without seeing the group just yet, I hope they just go and play a good brand of soccer. Obviously, everybody wants to win, but you want to just show competitive with, regardless of who your opponent is. The draw will happen January 13th, and we will know what team the Seattle Sounders are facing. But regardless of competition, I expect the Sounders to go out there and play their brand of soccer. Try to put the other team on their heels, use the width of the field, show a lot of the young talent in speed and velocity. Have a Raul Ruiz that usually shines in these types of tournaments. When it comes to the global stage at the club level, if there are three guys that you know are going to show up and play, is Christian Roldan, Nicolas Odero, and Raul Ruiz. So having those guys go out there playing a fantastic game and giving them their team a chance, because it's a difficult challenge for this team to get prepared in such little time and then have to make that trip to Morocco, get prepared. Going back to your question about what I'm going to be asking is Brant Smetzer and this coaching staff going to be playing Coachella or going to Arizona, playing some teams in Spain? Like, are they going to make a stop anywhere else aside from Morocco to kind of get the team prepared? So what the preseason schedule is. So my expectations are for this team to just play a good brand of soccer, be competitive, and show that the CONCACAF champions, the CONCACAF champion can go out there and compete with those teams at that caliber.
And there was news that came out, right now here in Atlanta, there's a lot of news, and I know that folks want to get your perspective on all of the outs that have been going on, especially with, your relationship and your journalistic relationship with Garth Lagerwey. But there have been some moves that have been either thought of or close to being thought of. There was the discussion I saw about Dineno possibly being added at one point for Seattle for this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that more got made of what it really was. I think Seattle, and I can confirm this, that at one point or another have made inquiries about that player. I mean, when you had him face-to-face in the CCL Champions final last season, he showed up to play. He's a very physical forward that, can change the game at any moment. He's actually very good with his speed, has some speed, some velocity, and, he's 28 years old. So they have made some inquiries about him, but that doesn't mean they're at the negotiating table. That doesn't mean that at this time, this roster can take a DP, and he would be a DP. There's no two ways around that. So had they looked at Dineno? Yes, potentially. But the reality is that the forward that we talked about 3 weeks ago or so in this show, when I was telling you the needs, it was more of the Herbert caliber, more of an MLS experienced guy that you could bring in with some gam and tam and maybe make some exchange for that. And that's what you saw it happen. So the Dineno thing, I don't dismiss it for the future. This organization tends to keep track on players for a very long time. But at this moment, before the summer window, it's just not going to happen.
There's another player that seems to be a bit of a lightning rod in Seattle. And I know that you've been catching some direct hits. They have not been strays. They have been direct hits. What are the conversations involving Christian Roldan? Why is he such a lightning rod for folks in Seattle? Is it looking at national team duty and trying to apply it to the Sounders' atmosphere and dynamic, or is it something entirely different? Why have you been catching so many arrows on Christian Roldan?
That's quite simple. There are just a lot of personalities and a lot of fans and followers of U.S. soccer in general that just don't give MLS in general that much validity. And to me, a lot of them are Euro snobs that just think that everything that's European and every player playing in Europe, regardless of that league level, is better than MLS. So when you're talking about a Christian Roldan that has been one of the most consistent, reliable, and important players of a team that has been MLS champion, CONCACAF champions, and everything that they've been able to manage with him as a pillar of this group, it's hard for me to not go and defend a guy that has those technical attributes, those physical attributes, the soccer IQ, and honestly, the track record, right? I mean, no player can choose where they're at. And if something is true of Christian, is that he has completely ripped and gone beyond any expectation that anybody had from a guy that you drafted from UW. And he is a Seattle icon, a legend, and I think he's one of the best players in the league. So why I go out and I think he catches so much heat is because he's an easy target. If you're not watching Christian Roldan on a daily basis and you go just simply by even just looking at his stats, you don't even see half of the work he does on the field. I mean, about recovering. I mean, about chasing space. His ability to work without the ball and create space for his teammates on and off the locker room. A lot of people make fun of him being a locker room guy and I don't know, a rah-rah guy, and that's all he could provide U.S. men's national team, and that's just a whole bunch of horseshit. So I get a lot of heat because a lot of people don't see the product as closely as I see it, and as close as a lot of us that have followed this team for a long time, and a lot of journalists in MLS who have followed Christian ever since he got into this league. So that's a little bit of why he gets a lot of heat and why some of us journalists have to kind of come out and be like, man, if you don't really know the player, if you don't follow him, just take a back seat.
All right. Atlanta United has not been sitting on their hands, and over the last handful of days, it's been a busy week. There were some of the folks in the Twitch pitch and some of the folks who are regular watchers and listeners were like, man, how are you guys going to fill space, getting ready for training camp and all that kind of stuff. And it has ended up with Alan Franco going to Sao Paulo. It has ended up official with Marcelino Moreno heading to Curitiba, and Emerson Heineman and the team mutually agreeing to part ways over the contract. And then the discussions that we saw from Tommy Scoops and others about Joseph Martinez being looked at from Inter Miami and possible SC Internacional in South America as well. So it's been very busy time, and you're seeing the stamps being put on this go around with Carlos Bocanegra and Garth Lagerwey.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and I did not foresee this coming. I know that Marcelino Moreno had not been an everyday starter, and there's a lot of other players that can fulfill that position, especially under Gonzalo Pineda's way of looking at the game and his formation. But I thought that he was so talented that maybe there was going to be some sort of super sub role for him, or a guy that was going to contribute quite often. 14 goals, 13 assists, something of that nature in his time in Atlanta doesn't scream out. But I think that his work rate was there. It's just that his inability to be consistent really followed him. And a lot of people, guys that follow the team a lot closer than I am, kind of always about how intermediate he can be at times. So because of that, maybe you want to loan him out, hope that going to Curitiba is going to help his game, is going to help him in confidence. And then you obviously have a plan for guys like Rossetto and Sosa and all these guys that could potentially play that inside of the midfield. And that's what I foresee. The Alan Franco one, I was less with. I thought Alan, man, he's a big talent, and I thought that he could have helped this team, especially when you don't know where Robinson is at, and potentially trying to ease him in some sort of form into the team. But one thing is sure, that if Garth and Bocanegra are doing these things now, with Garth Lagerwey being that partner to Bocanegra, there is a plan, and there could be looking for 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, but this is not just for show. If these guys are on loan and only on loan, is because there is some sort of plan for both of them.
And you look at, Franco was a purchase for Sao Paulo, and it was for 80% of the pass. So Atlanta United holds on to a little bit of that. The loan for Marcelino Moreno is interesting in the aspect of, say, Thiago Almada, who last time I've heard is good at the soccering at a very young age. If you get that offer that is just the offer that you can't refuse, you get that, then he moves on, say, in the summer. I mean, obviously the anticipation is that it'll be one more season full in Major League Soccer, then he moves on to the European continent. But if in the summer somebody sits there and is waving the golden briefcase, and it is that offer that you can't refuse. There's that opportunity that if Thiago moves on, Marcelino can come back from Coritiba and still be that impact player that he's been at times. And it also, going to Coritiba, gives him a place where he can start. He can get the consistent minutes. He can be a 90-minute guy, and he can show his skills for Coritiba on a match-by-match basis, where he wasn't getting that opportunity under Gonzalo Pineda.
And that's exactly why I was so much more on board with the Moreno move than I was with the Alan Franco move, because it does give you that option, and it gives you full control. For a team that likes to play with three center backs, they must have something in plans. They must be thinking about bringing another player, but sending him to Sao Paulo, yes, you get to keep that 20% if he goes elsewhere, but you still don't have that resource to bring in for a guy that had a chemistry, understood the game. And I don't know about you, John, but I thought he did well. I have a hard time pointing out, although there were times where he could have been better, if you had to take an overall look and put his work under a microscope, I said he passed the test, or at least the eye test. So that's why I was a little bit more online with the Marcelino Moreno loan than I was with the sell of a guy like Alan Franco. But once again, this is what Garth does, man. He was going to come in. He was going to look at a nice deep look at the entirety of that roster, including potential guys from the academy and guys coming up. So I have no room to doubt his ability to make this team better, and these moves are part of that.
Looking at Alan Franco's numbers and the academy element, Noah Cobb, who's heading to the U19 youth national team, he's getting another call up there. He's going to be someone who will be part of that center back grouping. Juanjo Purata obviously is going to be one of your starters. Having Noah Cobb as that group of four is what you're looking at. Obviously, you're looking at Miles when he's 100%. But I think that to your point, there's the shopping list right now that a lot of folks are staring at. And I know that there are names out there that if you've got enough Garber bucks, you can sit there and figure out, okay, I can bring in this guy and he can fit in under my cap. But to your Alan Franco point, here's just some of the numbers for Alan Franco when it came to what he was able to do with Atlanta United. And once again, thanks to, and a tip of the hat to our friends at FBref. Top 12% in assists, top 20% in XAG, top quarter in the league in shot creating actions, top 11%, 10% passes attempted, 5% in pass, top 5% in pass completion, top quarter, or what's 80? 1/5. Top 20% in progressive passes, top 3% in the league in dribbles completed, top quarter, say 70%, 71st% in tackles, and then top 15%, 17% in blocks at 83%. That's a lot of numbers that speak out to how Alan Franco, as a center back, grew into that role for Atlanta United. I know a lot of folks are looking at goals and shots and things like that, but that wasn't what Alan Franco was there for. He didn't win you a lot of aerials, wasn't there to clear the ball or pick the ball off a lot, but he was there to be that presence for you. And I think that he grew into that role, and I think that's what Sao Paulo saw in him, in addition to what he was doing with Atlanta United.
Hey, I take him right now. I mean, he's a player that one of the hardest things for a center back to do is feel comfortable enough to take his space out of that back line and be able to connect passes and put the ball in good positions, being quick in that first transition, his vision. And I thought Alan had check marks on absolutely all those boxes. His physicality, his inability to win aerial duels, I'll give you that, but that's something that you can grow into. That's something that can be worked on a lot easier than some of that soccer IQ you hear me talk and mention so much. I thought that he had that. So with that said, I wish him the best of luck. I think that he's going to be a very good player in Sao Paulo, and he gets a lot of experience and some showcasing in a different level. So I think he's going to do well, but I do have a little bit of concerns about Atlanta being able to replace him with ease. Looking now at those stats, right? Because I'm not a guy that's going to be completely by the numbers. I kind of go by what I see and feel during the games, and all those stats when absolutely in line with everything I saw. Alan Frank could do when he was playing within the pitch for Atlanta United.
A couple of other teams, I guess, drifting kind of back into Major League Soccer on the whole here. When it comes to other player movement, and I know that Sean Johnson's out there as a free agent apparently, and what we decided to do at SDH is kind of sit there and think of it almost like college recruiting. So-and-so's on a visit to this team, we'll treat it like that, like we're seeing here in the South, because as you well know, high school and college recruiting, man, it is big. It just means more in this part of the country. So we're kind of treating it that way now. Sean Johnson's visiting, still in discussions with NYC, visiting Toronto. Toronto's interested. I think Alexander Cayens is out there as another big name. So I think there are some names that can be had by a bunch of different folks. When you look at other teams that have made moves so far in this offseason leading into training camp, who has impressed you and who has you still scratching your head as to what in the wide world of sports are they doing or not doing?
When it comes to the scratching of the head, it's still Nashville. I thought that they were going to be a lot more active than they have been. Impressive, I would say, and I'm going to get hit by somebody about this, but I think LAFC pulling off the Aaron Long deal was very interesting. They have been a team that can manage to completely squeeze every cent out of that salary cap space with a lot of speculation on how is it possible. But I think that for Aaron Long to go to a team with the depth at center back and I think he's going to be a starter right next to Murillo. I think he makes them that much better. That LAFC team, depending on what happens with Gareth Bale and, potentially having an open DP spot. And when I foresee what they could do with that, it's scary to look over there and see that they got a guy like Aaron Long. I really like under the radar Memo Rodriguez going to the LA Galaxy. I think that he's a strong contributor for the LAG team. There's a lot of components from his game that I think could really help out in the midfield for the LA Galaxy. But if Toronto is able to get Sean Johnson, I think that's going to be a big, big deal.
Because they ain't stopping nobody last year, brother.
What's up?
They weren't stopping anybody last year, brother.
That's right. It is a position of need. So it'd be interesting if that happens. And scratching my head, if we talk about New York City, man, it sounds like the Alex Cayens thing is getting out of hand. And I don't know if they realize how huge Alex Cayens has been for that New York City team. And not just defensively and not just being a leader, but his ability to get forward with the ball. There were times that he was pushing up like a fullback would and creating opportunities and scoring goals. I mean, last season he had to be one of the top defensive scorers in the league. He had a fantastic year. So I think that they really need to figure out what they're going to do. Santiago Rodriguez is still on a twilight zone of some sort. Torque has called him back. You don't know if he's going to be with New York City FC. Does he get another offer from elsewhere? How are you going to replace those pieces? I don't know if they're too confident in their scouting process and in their depth of that roster, but I don't know where they're going to come from, John. It really does scratch my head. That might be my leader for scratching my head level.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at NYC. Maxi Morales, gone. Tinnerholm, gone. Hebert, you're going to get to watch him on a regular basis. Santi Rodriguez's loan has expired. Acevedo, DeBahia, Cayens Johnson, unsigned freeze. You've signed Tony Alfaro at center back, and you brought Pellegrini in. Okay, so all right. So, but there still seem to me. But once again, I think that what this does is the NYC is going to be relying on Talos Magno. You're looking at Keaton Parks and Morales, hoping that they stay healthy. But, yeah, I mean, there's you've got Andrade and Pereira, and you're going, okay, Amundsen at the back. I mean, you look at NYC, and yeah, NYC to me is the big head scratcher so far as we head into camps. And we always thought that DC United was going to be the head scratcher of head scratchers. NYC's gone to the front of the line in the East.
And the reason is because, I don't know about you, but when I think of DC United, I'm not thinking contender. I'm not thinking playoffs. So I don't scratch my head as much, I guess, because the expectations are a lot lower.
You expect them to be at the bottom.
The expectations are a lot lower. Exactly. Same as Houston, right? But when it comes to a team like New York City FC that has been back-to-back as one of the top teams in this league, and they have as much resources that they do, I expect them to be a little bit better. And yes, there's a lot of young talent in that team, including Pereira and Andrade. Yes, absolutely. But there is a certain point where you need a lot of these. We talk about, or you hear me talk a lot about that backbone and those pillars in the middle. You're missing a lot of those, including a very good and important and constant goalkeeper, and a guy like Alexander Cayens is one of the best in the league. So how are you going to be able to get away from that? Maxi was a spiritual and a magician when he came to the team in general. He was always going to make that quick pass into space, perfectly placed for whether it was Talis or Santi or whoever at the end. You're not going to have that this year. So without some of those pieces, man, I think they're really going to be in trouble if they don't kind of get it together.
And then let's wrap up with what's going on in LA with LAFC and LAG. LAG gets Mavinga and introduces him to their roster. You're wondering with LAG about firepower up top. I mean, you figure it's probably going to be some combination of Grandsir, Chicharito, Douglas Costa, whichever version of Douglas Costa you're going to get. Because I think that with Joveljic, with the Bishop, you saw that you bring Joveljic in and he runs for 30 minutes and he ends up getting you the offense that you're needing late in matches. You got Ricky Puig and what he was able to do. Brugman helped out at the back. I still think that there are questions at the back with LAG, even bringing Mavinga in. But you mentioned with LAFC, they're right up against whatever cap there is. Man, they are right up against it, and they're going to spend right up against it, and not worry about it and have any kind of a second thought. You mentioned Aaron Long. I want to ask you about Aaron Long. How much of a concern do you have about Aaron Long? I mean, obviously the salary figure for LAFC, it doesn't matter. So LAFC is going to sit there and pay him whatever. How much of a concern do you have about him coming off of his surgery and dealing with his Achilles and being outside of a Red Bull's system where now he's going to have to be kind of in this freewheeling thing where you're going to have to be running a lot, going back and forth, and you're really going to be putting a lot of miles on your Fitbit in that defense if you're Aaron Long?
Yeah, I think I'm more concerned about the system than I am about his physical ability and recovery. If there's something that we know about MLS is that those medical exams are as thorough as they can be, and they're going to check absolutely everything, and they will not give you a dime until that is said and done. And believe me that I've missed out on breaking some pretty big news, because when those medical exams are happening, nothing can get divulged and nothing can get out, and it's so kept confidential. And then once that happened, they immediately lock you in. I can tell you that if Aaron Long ends up going to LAFC and is healthy, I'm more concerned about going away from that Red Bull style, right? It's a completely different system. I think that the center backs for LA Galaxy constantly get put into open spaces where they don't really want to be. And when they push up high, there isn't as much help from those center midfielders as you would in under the Red Bull system. So I really do think that he might struggle, and it's going to take him some time. But I don't expect him to be immediately thrown in there. I think that he will get to ease in, and having a guy like Cellini probably giving you some tips on how to be better as a center back, that could help you out some. But yeah, I'm more concerned about him working out away from that Red Bull system where he hasn't really been successful to LAFC team that has a lot of pressure. He's going to come in with, being like the new signing. It's never easy to be able to be that guy. And then a system that just doesn't quite works out for you when it comes to being a center back.
And to your point, yes, he is younger than Chiellini. Everybody's younger than Chiellini except you and except me, actually. I think I'm the only person around that is older than Chiellini that we're talking about when it comes to LAFC and soccer. Cut the promo for me. What's going on at the soccer bar and with Pulso Sports? And I know that you've got some. You're going to be heading to Starfire this weekend. What's going on?
Yeah, so Saturday, that's going to be our big day. I am hoping to do a Twitter space Saturday throughout the training. Then I'm going to have an English and a Spanish breakdown of what I saw during the first day of practice here for the Seattle Sounders. So check that out at Pulso Sports. And then with Soccer Bar, we're still trying to figure out some producer stuff that we need to figure out. And then we should be back and rolling sometime next week. But once again, I'm also going to have an article coming out for Sandra Hart featuring Guillermo Gomez Andrade and what he experienced 2022 and his expectations for 2023.
Looking forward to it, as always. El Rolo NW, Niko Moreno on his second cup of coffee, and he is it the Rave Green today? What's the mug?
Yes, that Rave Green because you can't see it because of the magic of there it is, right there.
Okay, there's the Rave Green on the second cup of coffee. Niko Moreno. Thursdays with Niko on a Friday, as always, my friend. Great to hang out with you and get the Western Conference perspective on things, whether it's on the Western Conference or with what's going on here in Atlanta. Thanks as always, my friend. We'll catch up next week.
Have a good one, boss.
What he said. And since it's the end of the show, that means I get to do this. We'll catch up with Niko next week, and especially if I can hit the right button.